Howdy gentlemen, tomorrow is my 90-day anniversary of being in Asuncion. So I'm leaving tomorrow, and today I want to make a comparison video between Asuncion, Paraguay and Minsk, Belarus. So obviously I spent 2 years in Minsk, and I may still go back there, I'm not sure yet, and 90 days now in Asuncion. So obviously my knowledge of Minsk is a bit better, but I want to compare the two. It's kind of interesting, because they're two places that are, in some ways they're kind of similar, because they're both these kind of smaller, landlocked countries that people don't know much about, quite frankly. So you kind of got these things in common. And there's a growing number of expats in both, but definitely here more so. So all right, let's run through some basics. So first of all, let's look at something non-contentious and non-controversial, which would be price levels, right? And then we'll look at things like infrastructure, culture, girls, dating, other expats, things to do, all that kind of stuff. Weather. All right, so first up, prices. This is pretty straightforward. I think for rents, it may be a fraction cheaper here in Asuncion, but not that different. But the big thing with Asuncion is that in the gringo areas, you're going to probably pay something similar to what you'd pay in Minsk, or maybe even a fraction more, to be honest. But outside of gringo areas, you can get yourself a good deal. A guy I met here was telling me his apartment's only $350 per month for a 2-bed, 2-bath. So fucking hell. That's cheap. But that's kind of out, it's getting away from the gringo area. It's going to be away from other foreigners and questionable safety. Otherwise, you're looking at kind of 600 as an entry level, maybe, for a basic gringo apartment. And in Minsk, it's probably something similar for the better areas. But here it'll be newer as well. So, but everything else, look, it's probably cheaper in Minsk, to be honest. I mean, food and coffee is definitely cheaper. So I'll look at my expenses, right? My expenses, food and coffee is a huge amount of that, right? Because I'm spending a lot of time in cafes, working, hanging out, whatever, right? So studying. So for me, I would probably spend less in Minsk. Because in Minsk, you can go to Cafe Terry and you can buy a coffee for about $1.50. Whereas here, the cheapest coffees will be about $3 or $4, Probably $3 to $5 US is the range for coffees here. And I'm literally drinking probably 3 a day, right? So this is a huge difference. And probably, having Kamarowka market there helps a lot. You have a big fresh fruit market, fresh everything. So I would say overall, Minsk might be a fraction cheaper, but it really depends entirely on your accommodation. That's the big factor. But otherwise, considering Belarus is quite a bit of a richer country, that's something you should consider. The price level is still about the same, roughly speaking. Right? So keep that in mind. Look, infrastructure, obviously. Belarus was set up by the commies. You've got nice wide roads. You've got a really good metro system that's working well. It's just set up well. You've got lots of activities, things to do. You've got lots of theatres, much more developed, sporting leagues and this kind of stuff as well, right? But there's kind of a bit of a reason for that as well. I mean, obviously Belarus is a richer country, but of course Belarus overall is shrinking, right? Because it's a post-feminist country, so it's shrinking rapidly. They're not having any kids, right? Whereas here, it's still growing. So you're going to expect that Asuncion is going to be bursting at the seams a bit, right? Because they're still growing, and then you've got this internal migration towards Asuncion as well. So you kind of expect Asuncion to be bursting at the seams a little bit more, which is what we're getting. Of course, in Minsk, obviously, you got internal migration as well. But people live in apartments in Minsk. So the whole feeling of Minsk is this kind of old Soviet kind of place, right? Or very European kind of place, because it's all in apartments. Everyone's living in apartments, essentially, mainly. Whereas here, only gringos live in apartments, right? Everyone else has house. It's like a normal, kind of like a Western country in that way. So how people live is very different. So you got this condensed living in Belarus, Minsk, in particular, Minsk. You got this condensed living, right? So everything's kind of efficient. Things are all close to you, and you haven't got crazy traffic and whatever else. But then you got a lot smaller places to live. So the living quarters here in a house are going to be a lot bigger. I saw a house the other day around the corner from where I'm living here in Belarus, which is obviously a nicer gringo area, and it was $300K US, but the house itself was 300 square meters on a 600 square meter block. So it's 600 square meters developable in time, if the market keeps going how it is. And 300 square meters is a hell of a fucking house, mate. It's a big place. There's a lot of rooms in there. A lot of rooms, a lot of bedrooms. So, yeah. But overall, look, Belarus is on the surface, Minsk is on the surface probably a first world city, right? Whereas Asuncion's still pretty rough. It's getting a bit neater and cleaner in ways, and there's some development and stuff. But yeah, one is a very organised society and functional society, and Asuncion's still kind of coming through the ranks. You know? So you've only got that different stages of development. And again, Asuncion's kind of, and Paraguay's kind of on the rise. Lots of people moving here. Population's still growing. Blah blah blah. Whereas Belarus is kind of in decline because again, it's a post-communist, post-feminist society, right? So they don't have any kids. So you got this constant decrease of about 1% per year of the population, right? Crime and safety. Look, obviously it's Latin America, but Paraguay's pretty safe, man. Like, sorry, let me take that back. The key parts of Asuncion as a gringo you're going to be in are pretty safe, man. Like, I feel pretty safe here as a general rule. I haven't really heard any, because you speak to people, right? So you hear stories. And I really haven't heard many stories about things being rough here, anything getting, nothing much, right? And Minsk, of course, is possibly the safest city in the world. So Belarus, as I've mentioned on the channel before, is incredibly safe. Very, very low level of street crime. Almost non-existent, right? Everything's clean, taken care of. It's a very different, it's like living in some kind of Soviet museum of what it could have and should have been, you know? Whereas, yeah, Asuncion, it's a bit more rough around the edges, and I'm sure once you get outside of Paraguay, outside of Asuncion, outside of the key gringo areas, it might change a bit, but the general consensus from everyone seems to be that it's definitely one of the safer Latin American countries, if not the safest. So you should keep that in mind, because it's not as if you need the safest country in the world to live, right? You just need something that's not too dodgy, right? So Paraguay's fine, I think, in this regard. But of course, Belarus, it's tough competition, because Belarus, as I say, probably is the safest country in the world. Now, in terms of corruption, it's interesting because, look, this is a pretty corrupt country. You know, there's a lot of corruption in government business here. Belarus, there's a lot less corruption at the lower and medium levels. There's a lot less corruption. You can still pay to get things done at times, but not as easily as you can here. Here you just pay, that's how it works. It's more like Ukraine kind of country, right? And at the top of both countries, of course, things are a lot more mixed in both countries, obviously. All right, English penetration and number of expats and types of expats around. So Asuncion has a rapidly increasing expat community. Fucking hell, mate. So 38,000 residencies were taken out last year, up from like, I don't know, in the 20s of thousands the year before. Now, half of these are Brazilians, yeah? So probably only about maybe a third of those will speak English out of the 38,000, because you've got the Brazilian guys, some can speak English. You've got Argentinians, you've got Bolivians, and then you've got your Germans, your Dutch, Australian, American, blah, blah, blah. But the number of Westerners that are coming in, it's still a fairly small number, but you can find a crew fast here. It's getting well organised, people know each other. You can find some friends, some homies pretty fast, yeah, here. Whereas in Minsk, look, man, there's not many foreigners. Sorry, there's a lot of foreigners, there's not many Westerners. So if you want to hang out with some Turks and some Arabs and Chinese, Belarus is great. If you want to hang out with other Westerners, there's a lot less in Minsk. Obviously for current political reasons, a lot less in Minsk. But there's a lot more in Paraguay and growing, but still not that many. But yeah, enough to find a crew. In the general population, look, in the gringo areas, these people, kind of upper class folks, a lot speak some English, you know what I mean? And actually, that's probably something I should touch on, is the class structure. Like, Belarus is still pretty commie. Like, the apart from the elites, everyone else has a very even income level. You know? Whereas here you've got really a more defined dual class system. Yeah, here you got old school dual class system. Here you've just got a certain proportion of the people just have all the money, and everyone else is really struggling on the minimum wage or whatever. Whereas Belarus, as I say, things are a bit more even in Belarus, but then you haven't got the extravagant wealth. Well, not as many people have that extravagant wealth anyway. Also here, well, in Belarus, of course, again, it's a richer country, so public services work a little bit better. I mean, that's just obvious, including metro system, as well as hospital system and so forth. That's kind of obvious, being in a richer country. Weather, look, it's fucking hot, mate. It's 9 o'clock. I'm walking to the gym. You've noticed probably I'm doing most of my videos on the way to the gym, right? So I've almost always got my gym top on in these videos filmed in Paraguay. It must be, man, that sun is streaming down. Look at that bad boy. Sun is streaming down. It must be, it's already at least 30. And today it might get to 38. So she's pretty fucking warm, mate. Whereas Minsk is 4 seasons, right? 4 proper seasons. Whereas here it's just kind of like one season it's hot. You get maybe 3 or 4 cooler months. Yeah, really 3 or 4 really crushingly hot months where you really can't do a lot outside for most of the day. So that's something to keep in mind. Are you a hot person or a cold person? You know, obviously Europeans are used to the snow and cold and ice and shit, whereas I'm Australian, so I'm not used to that shit. So for me, maybe it's a bit easier here. I don't know. Let's talk about cultures, man. The cultures are like so different. So Belarusian culture, look, people, it's that old Soviet mentality still quite strong there. That people really aren't friends with each other. People aren't warm with each other. There's a fake smile and a fake duty to be polite, because that's the Belarusian way. But there's not a lot of social connections. Like most people have 1 or 2 friends and maybe their mum, and that's kind of it, yeah? Now it is changing a bit with the younger generation. There is being a bit more social and larger social networks and you know, groups of friends and stuff, especially as more and more people go to university. But there's still that core culture of, it's really a loner culture, I would say, in general. Whereas here it's super social. I mean, it's super social. People are always with other people. People invite people. There's this kind of networking thing going on. Really strongly here. So they're really polar opposites in that regard, I would say. So this has implications for your life, right? So yeah, if you live in Belarus, it's going to be hard to get genuine local friends, especially once you're an adult. Whereas here, I mean, you know, as long as you can share the same language, you can start making associates, friends and networks here pretty quickly. And last but not least, because this is what you're really watching, that would be women and dating culture. So of course, in terms of objective beauty, well, Belarus is close to the best in the world. So that's kind of obvious. Paraguayan girls not bad though. They're pretty decent in terms of appearance. Certainly at the top end as well. There's a lot of competition between these girls. It's a real, what was that TV show? Was it The Desperate Housewives or Housewives of whatever? Yeah, that serial. It feels like you're in an episode of that sometimes here when you're in some of these richer shopping centres. There's a lot of polishing going on with these girls. They're really, you know, really spiking their SMB at the top end. Whereas in Belarus, it's just a culture of looking good all the way through the social classes. And girls really prioritise that in Belarus, to be slim, long hair, and to dress well. Here, things are a bit rougher. Yeah, things are a bit rougher. But some of the girls are pretty good. So in terms of looks as well. So it kind of depends what you like. Obviously, they've got a lot of Latina proportions here, which I didn't quite understand what that meant until I came here. I'm just like, oh my goodness, some of these proportions are quite remarkable, to say the least. So if that's your thing, for me it's not so much, to be honest, but if it's your thing, then that's obviously a big plus here. So I would say that thinking about the way the cultures are, that's thinking about how you're going to meet girls, right? So in a country like Belarus, I would say they're actually a bit more open to cold approach, and that's just because like there's not as much social control, social judgment from friends or family or whatever else, and also just they have less options in a sense because of that as well. So in a place like Belarus, you can find your girl who, you know, maybe works from home and doesn't have many friends, and you know, she might be open to you, kind of thing, just from cold approach. Whereas here, girls are not so open to cold approach. It's definitely more of a social circle environment. But you don't have to know someone that well, yeah? Like the whole idea of social circle, dude, you can just be at the same dinner and just have one mutual friend that you both barely know, and that counts, you know what I mean? So it's okay. You don't have to have like a recommendation from a trusted friend and their trusted friend of yours. Or it's not that fucking deep. It's just the girl just needs to feel like there's some kind of social connection between you, right? And then that's fine. She's open. But otherwise, she's probably not going to be. Whereas Belarus, you can get a bit more openness to that kind of cold approach kind of idea. And because they're a bit more independent, they're a bit more, not as concerned by judgment in that area. Whereas here they might be a little bit more like that in general. I think in Belarus, like, girls just aren't that interested in guys. Like, a girl who's 18 is probably a virgin, probably never been on a date, and probably doesn't want to. Yeah, again, broad brush strokes. There's definitely exceptions. There's girls that'll have lots of boyfriends, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. But I mean, if I'm thinking about the archetype of your kind of 18-year-old, 19-year-old Belarusian girl, that's kind of it, man. Like, it's kind of this asexuality, and guys report this all the time. And to get together, essentially what happens is the guy kind of orbits for a while until she gets comfortable, and then she can choose him if she wants to choose him or not. And he just kind of hangs out and hopes for the best. But then that's it, they're together. And they may be together forever, or at least till she divorces him about 10 years later. So it's often just the first boyfriend's husband. But again, not because they've been taught to be virtuous or taught to be modest sexually or anything. It's just that they just don't like men much. And the first one that comes along that's useful, they just go with them, essentially. Whereas here, there's a lot more dating going on. Here you can see there's a lot more cheating, there's a lot more partner swapping, there's a lot more partner poaching. The mentality here is a lot different. Girls have a lot more just inherent interest in men. Just in general, and I think the girls are more, definitely more sexualized and sexual, and have more stronger kind of sexual impulses than Belarusian girls do. That's definitely something I've noticed. Definitely what I've heard from both women and from men here a lot is just the amount of cheating. And definitely from both sides. Like, as every country, the man's demonized. Oh, men are possessive, men are this, men are cheating, whatever. The last time I was talking to a girl, and I said, okay, well, why are they possessive? Like, things don't happen in a fucking vacuum. And I mean, I'm not fucking stupid. Like, why are they possessive? Like, what in the culture makes them possessive? Like, are girls cheating as much as guys? Or it's like, both sides cheat heaps. I'm like, and I also just see that Latin women are very controlling and jealous and a bit mental as well. I mean, are they just as possessive as men? She's like, yeah, they are. And there you go. And that happens on both sides, because men will complain about women cheating a lot, and they'll complain about them being very jealous and possessive. But then it's like, well, what about dudes? And it's like, well, yeah, okay, they are too. So obviously you've got this kind of intensity. You've got a lot of cheating going on. And in Belarus, you get less cheating, I would say, on average. And it's just because people don't know each other, people don't mix as much. Whereas here, there's social circles everywhere. People know each other. And once you're kind of in that kind of network, then it's really easy to do that, right? Whereas Belarus, there's just less social networks, there's less opportunities. I really think that's mainly what it is. Because once the girl's been married and experienced this kind of thing, then she realizes it'll be the same or better with other men as well, right? So there's that chance of cheating as well. And it's not from a morality thing that they don't cheat, it's just from inexperience and just a lack of knowledge situation they're not cheating, right? So I would definitely say that the cheating rate would definitely be higher here, I mean, without doubt. It's not exactly low in Russia or Belarus either, but it's definitely higher here. I think one thing I should touch on, so I'm reflecting on the video just as I'm making it, I'm making it sound pretty one-sided. Like, the Belarus is definitely the better option, where it's clearly not that clear cut, right? So I'll say a few more things. I'll say taxes. So here you have a glut of dudes showing up to become tax residents, because you essentially pay no tax on your foreign income. So you can just have a interactive brokers account in the States, and a tax residency here, and you're paying no tax on your capital gains, right? Any trading you're doing, any swing trading or even day trading or whatever, any investments, it's all zero tax, right? So you have guys kind of queuing up to become tax residency. They're not queuing up to live here, like maybe a quarter live here, but the tax residency is kind of a lure here. Whereas Belarus, if you get mixed up in the tax system in Belarus, it's a lot more complicated, yeah? So that's something you need to keep in mind as well. There's a reason why people are flocking here, that's the main reason. And also with Belarus, look, there's a lot of political uncertainty, right? Like, it's quite stable at the moment. I think the US, for the time being, recognises it can't overthrow the government just now, but you never know what will happen in the future, you know what I mean? Whereas here, the government's quite stable, The country's a lot more politically stable, I would say. Again, Belarus day to day is politically stable. It's very stable, as stable as you're going to get. But again, the US is lurking in the background. They want to take over, right? They want to get control of the country. So this is going to lead to some things happening. And you look at what's happening over the border there. You've had this series of events, including the US taking over Ukraine, kind of 12 years ago now, and then other events that have happened, and fucking look what's happened now, right? So you got to be aware. Not saying the same thing would happen in Belarus necessarily, but you got that real political uncertainty in Belarus. What's going to happen? The current government with the current structure is unlikely to still be there in 20 years' time, right? It could be. Maybe there's a successful transition and they keep the Americans out and they keep some kind of sovereignty. Maybe. It's not impossible. But what's more likely is that the US does take over, because the US does tend to get its way and control countries, right? I know I probably shouldn't be saying this so obviously, but let's just cut to the chase that we all know this, right? Like that's how it works, right? They're the strongest, they're the biggest, and they're seeking to control directly or indirectly as many countries as they can. It's just obvious, and this is what any empire would do, right? It's the same shit. So, but you got to understand that can create really unfortunate circumstances in the future. Whereas here, you're probably not going to get that. Yeah, at some stage, if they convince enough people to be socialist and blah, 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 radical left-wing from the West, once the West has convinced enough local people to do that, maybe you'll get like a radical left government here. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible as well, right? But for the time being, that ain't going to fucking happen, that's for sure. So I think both are quite stable in the short term, but here's likely to be more stable in the long term. But as I say that, look, Latin America has a long history of communism. They have a long history of really fucking things up with communism, yeah? This continent fucks themselves up with communism, right? They, for some reason, think it's a fucking good idea to be communists, right? So, obviously at the moment it's not as in fashion, necessarily, especially on the southern border, but, you know, people have wacky ideas, man. So I think going forward, I mean, you want to be mobile, you know? You want to be mobile, you don't want to be tied in somewhere. And if you're thinking about moving to either Belarus or Paraguay, I'd be thinking about what passports and what options do I have? You know what I mean? That's what I'd be thinking about if I was you. Because you could imagine that just the sheer stability of Paraguay for so long, that something will happen, and it'll probably be radical left, and it'll probably be some kind of socialist, communist, blah, 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 right? But again, it might be 20 years away, I don't know, but you'll still be alive in 20 years, maybe. You'll have a young family probably, and then be in a place with a socialist revolution. It's like, what the fuck, we're doing this again. You know, we haven't learned anything in this space, right? So, and then Belarus, as I say, I mean, you just don't know how aggressive the Americans will get at some stage, right? You just don't know. You know, will it involve military? Will it involve... Because it didn't work last time when they tried to get the locals to do an overthrow, right? It didn't work back in 2020. So, yeah, who knows? Who knows? Obviously, Trump and Lukashenko are talking. They've had several deals because Lukashenko's been letting out political prisoners and they've been getting more access to selling fertilizers and other goods to the EU. So, you know, there's been some kind of chatting behind closed doors. And you never know where that will lead. You know, who knows? Because don't forget, before 2020, Belarus was opening up. Yeah, Belarus was pretty independent politically. It was going a bit on both sides. Yeah, it was having a bit on both sides, a bet each way, so to speak. So, yeah, we just don't know. We just don't know about that. But I would think about that a little bit. You can't predict it, obviously, but what you can have is multiple options. So I would think about that going forward. In a place like Paraguay, honestly, just having a residency here, it doesn't hurt, mate. Just come for a month or two. You pay someone a couple of grand and they'll set it up for you. You'll have your tax residency here. You'll have a driver's license here, bank account here. I mean, it's a pretty good option to have, you know, depending how you live and whatever. So anyway, look, that's Belarus, Minsk and Paraguay in general. I think it's very much depends on your priorities in life. Sorry, I didn't mention one thing about the girls. The girls here are fucking family orientated, except for like the elite girls in the you know, I mean, Shopping Del Sol now, Shopping Del Sol, Shopping Mariscal, across the road there, Paseo del Galleria. Yeah, of course the girls in here are not like that, right? The girls in here are more interested in money and consuming whatever. But your rank and file Paraguayan girl, man, she wants a family. She wants kids. Yeah, I was in a second tier city last week I've never seen so many fucking children. I've never been to a country where I've seen so many children. Even the Thots were having at least 2 kids. Everyone else was having 3 or 4. Even running around the shopping centre in this second tier city, and there's just fucking kids everywhere. Like the average would be like 3.5 or 4 kids. That's what I saw, yeah, day in, day out in that town. Whereas Belarus, you're never going to find that. These Belarusian women, 1 and done. You know, maybe 2 if you're lucky, but probably 1 and done. And just look at the data. I read an article the other day, my buddy from Minsk sent to me, and the fertility rate now, women in Minsk, is 0.6. Right? Not Belarus, the country, it's Minsk itself, 0.6. They're not even having a kid per woman. Like, it's. I would imagine that in some stage, Belarus will either collapse, have to merge in formally with another jurisdiction, or have a huge influx of migrants. Like, they're the only options there for Belarus. Like, it's crumbling. It's crumbling. It's comfortable there today, but it's not going to be in the same shape that it's going to be in. Like, something's going to have to happen, right? You can't just keep having this fertility rate drop, but not be a rich country, right? It just doesn't work that way. And also, you got that little bit of net migration out every year as well. You got your 20, 30, 40k young people leaving, and it's something will need to change structurally in a place like Belarus. Again, it either fails, it attaches to another country, mass flooding in of Indians. Russia's already doing this recently. So that's something to think about too, as Paraguay can stand on its own 2 feet for another couple of generations. I'm sure the same thing will happen here eventually, but for now, you'd probably raise a family here and have a stable life here. 20, 30 years, not much will change. Whereas Belarus, you got this demographic time bomb, this post-feminist kind of suicide, civilizational suicide effectively, happening with people leaving and the political jostling around it. There's a lot more uncertainty, I would say, in the next 2 decades or 3 decades in Belarus. Anyway, just some thoughts. Look, I think both countries are quite good. I think they're both quite comfortable, both quite functional. But hopefully, this video, I've probably forgotten a few things, but I've thrown a fair bit in there for you, a fair bit of fodder there to talk about. I might make another video shortly comparing a few more countries with Paraguay here.